Hey, Chef, how are you? It's Eric from Locals Only.
Hey, Eric, good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I'm right around the corner. I'm going to come and scoop you up. Is that okay?
Excellent. Ready to go.
All right, I'm in a white Mercedes. I'll see you in just a second. Hey, welcome to Locals Only. I'm Eric Hale, and if you don't know me, I'm the guy that founded Local Magazine 14 years ago in my garage. It's been my job for all those years to tell you the coolest places to eat in all of Southern California, fun things to do so you have date nights that aren't boring, and we've talked to some really interesting people. Now we have a podcast, and we're lucky enough to call this Mercedes-Benz EQE all-electric sedan, courtesy of Fletcher Jones Motorcars in Newport Beach, our mobile podcast studio. So sit back, buckle up, and enjoy the conversation. Welcome to Locals Only. Today, we're in the North Park neighborhood of San Diego, and we're going to pick up Drew Deckman at the site of his soon-to-be-open 3131 restaurant. We're going to talk to him about his life living in Mexico for the past 20 years and slow farming, what it's like now living in San Diego, and his aspirations, very young, of being a Major League Baseball umpire. So sit back, buckle up, and enjoy Locals Only. Nice to meet you, Drew.
Hi, Drew.
This is my wife back here, Chef Aaron.
Hi, good morning.
So we are, just want to double check this, everybody, we're recording right now, so we have cameras all in front of us.
All right.
You have your mic there, and we're just going to take a drive, kind of aimless.
All right, perfect.
Just talk a little bit. Really happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
And we are riding around through, I guess we just picked you up in University Heights, kind of the North Park area.
North Park, yeah.
And we're going to be talking to him about a lot of different things. And I think maybe interestingly, I didn't know this because I think I made the assumption when your restaurant was in Valle.
Mm-hmm. Still is. That's something really important for me that people understand is that,
yeah,
you know, this is addition, not subtraction.
Right.
It doesn't, you know, we're not bringing necessarily Baja Food to San Diego. What we're exporting is our ethic and our philosophy and our way of trying to create, you know, a sustainable culture around a restaurant space. And, you know, we've been looking for, a long time here in San Diego to find the right spot. And we finally did, and really, really excited to be here.
That's an interesting, I think, change because you've been living there for a long time.
Yeah, I've been in Mexico 20 years.
How is it being back here, or do you know yet?
Shoot, man, I've been, for the last 10 years, I've been in San Diego 1 or 2 days a week on a regular basis.
Right.
You know, we do some banking up here, you know, mailboxes, you know, it's sometimes you just need, you know, pavement without potholes, right? And so, you know, initially, you know, I'm very, very dedicated to this new project, and I just think my, you know, everyday boots on the ground is going to be, you know, the key to our initial successes. You know, I don't want to tell somebody or train somebody to create the culture that we want to have at 3131. I want to do it.
How exciting.
You know, the nice thing about San Diego County, the amazing thing about San Diego County is it has more private/family farms than any other county in the state of California per capita. And that's, you know, people don't think about it when they're downtown. You go 20 minutes east and, you know, it's some of the richest, most productive farmland in the entire state.
And so at your new restaurant, I think that's a good way to look at it, at the one that's getting ready to open, 3131. How are you going to, what's the best way that you can translate what happens south of the border to here north of the border? Sorry to make a question longer, but I think some people come in, they look at a menu, they order, but they're not as educated or know the story behind it. Is that important?
You know, I think the action is more important than sort of a preaching, informative situation.
Okay.
I think that gets tiresome. I think a server that talks to you for 35 minutes before you get to order, you know, your bread and butter course it's too much.
Okay.
And you know, some people, all they're interested in is, you know, a good meal and a pleasant experience. And some people, will really care. I don't want the dining experience at the table to feel like a Portlandia episode, right?
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that when I personally post anything about Mexican food, there's a lot of, well, that's not authentic. And I feel like that's like saying you saw an apple pie and saying, well, that's not an authentic apple pie, when there's so many regions of food in the United States, just like there's so many regions of food in Mexico, and it depends on where you're at. So if you're in Baja, you might be eating mussels, but you're not eating them if you're in the mountains.
Right.
You're not eating shrimp tacos in certain parts of Mexico, but like you are in other places.
Well,
so when people say authentic, that's such a weird thing because it's such a big country.
Yeah. And I agree with that completely. I think it's a disrespect to the complexity of food in Mexico to call Mexican food. It is so hyper regional that you have to talk about Oaxacan food or Yucatan food or Michoacan food or Sinaloan food. And so back to that, we, not me, a group of chefs who have really been, banging the boards hard for the last 10 to 15 years and even more, including, Benito Molina, Yair Tellez from Laja. Those guys have been down there, 20, 25 or more years, really celebrating the region. They were really the first pioneers coming in there trying to up the bar.
Right. I would love to see what it looked like back then. Because I didn't start traveling down there until the last maybe 15 years. So 25 years ago, it had to be, there's 160 restaurants now, 100 and something wineries.
It's
massive.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so, as it also gets more diversified, you see guys putting the salmon on their menu and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, as far as I know, there's no salmon land in Ensenada, right?
Yeah, not close by.
Baja food is an ingredient-driven food. I don't think that you can define it in a form of recipes. It's such a crossroads and has been for hundreds of years based on maritime influences. There's a huge Asian influence. Korean, Japanese, Chinese, all because of its geographical location. Some of it, there's English, there's French, you go to the southern part of the peninsula and there's, people's last names are Green and White and Burgoyne and all these names. And, the stories are, it's a
melting pot.
It's my, but they've been there for 200 years.
Right.
Wow.
Because their great grandfather was on a whaler out of England and said, screw this.
I'm staying here.
You round the horn, you get all the way up there and they're like, no, you know what? I'm just going to disappear. And then all of a sudden they pop up in some village and away you go. Right. Baja cuisine, I think, is a much less defined food as opposed to some of the pre-Hispanic based cuisines. A mole negro in Oaxaca is a mole negro. Yeah, each town sort of has its own little its own little version of it. But
there's 100 and something versions of corn. Like you go to Oaxaca and you can have any kind of corn that you want, and they grow it.
And so Baja's the same way. This is ingredients from Baja by default make it Baja cuisine. If your hands are French or your hands are Italian or your hands are from Mexico City,
right,
you're cooking Baja food if you're using Baja ingredients exclusively, right? Yeah. So now if you start bringing in, all right, well, I'm bringing in chilies from other places. Anything that grows in Baja is something that we've brought, except for seaweeds and things like that. It's a desert, right?
So, and I also understood you played a little bit of baseball when you were younger too?
Yeah, played a little bit in high school, played in college. Actually wanted to be, I have a degree in philosophy, right?
Okay.
And so I was like, what do you do with that, right?
Yeah.
You just have long
become a
conversations over
philosopher.
coffee at night.
That's it. And that's why I
Yeah.
boil water for a living now.
Yeah.
And so coming out of college, I wanted to be a professional baseball umpire.
You know what? Can I tell you something? Me too.
Really? Cool.
I played baseball till I was about 16.
Okay.
But when I was about 13, I started doing umpiring. Started with T-ball,
Okay.
worked my way through. So by the time I was 16 and in high school, I was actually umpiring high school games. So I would drive and they'd pay me, I think, this is in the 80s, mid 80s. So they'd pay me a few bucks, enough for gas money. But I was getting my reps in at high school games. And then my idea was to go college and then, eventually make the pros. And I think somebody talked me out of it. They said how hard it was to actually break into that. And I kind of I took a detour.
It's harder to become a big league umpire than it is to probably become a big league player.
Right. Because they stick around for 40 or 50.
Yeah.
They won't leave.
No idea.
And so one of the cool things that I got exposed to, I went to college I went to Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
And at that time it was the Memphis Chicks. It was a Kansas City Royals AA team.
Right.
And one of my best friends at school was actually from Germantown right there in Memphis, had been going to Chicks games since they were, basically, hatched, let's call it. And we would sit with the scouts that were there from other teams. And through that, we sort of got to know some of the umpires and got to, and so it just kept growing and growing.
Oh, how cool.
And, starting to build relationships. I applied to this umpire school in Jupiter, Florida.
I looked into that same type of school.
Paid my tuitions.
Wow.
And I'm packing my bag to go.
Yeah.
And I literally had this epiphany of, the hell am I doing?
Really?
What are you thinking? Right.
Yeah.
And I called him. I said, hey man, I'm not.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to show up. I never went.
I would love to know more about slow farming, slow living, slow cooking. The word slow is super popular right now because I feel like everything is speeding up with AI and everything. We all desire to slow down. How do we?
We're kind of obsessed with the slow.
So tell me a little bit about slow living or slow farming or slow whatever that is, and then maybe how people might be able to do a little bit of that into their life to bring in some slowness.
Yeah. So, slow food is not my idea.
Right.
I lived 10 years in Europe, and at that time, slow food was fledgling. It was young. It was formed in the late 80s by Carlo Petrini. He saw a McDonald's built at the base of the Spanish Steps in Rome and said, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And what we need is slow food, not fast food. And
slow food might have been in its infancy, but I know when I lived in Germany, which you had restaurants in Germany, slow eating was not. It wasn't odd to do 4 hours, 5 hours for dinner.
But that's a cultural thing.
Right,
And it always has been.
Right.
And I'm sure as the world changes and becomes faster, that
will probably
changes as well.
Yeah.
But it's not just about ingredients. It's about, I did a TED Talk, and then I was on a panel in this sustainability forum in Ensenada not too long ago. And on this panel, there was, several other chefs, and the panelist said, well, define for me what, sustainable gastronomy is. And every single person on the panel talked about ingredients.
Yeah.
And then it got to me. I was at the end. I think it was a dinosaur ranking, right?
Okay.
The person with the most seat time got questioned last. And I said, well, what, the way I understood the question was, we're talking about gastronomy. We're not talking about ingredients. And no one has talked about people. No one has talked about waste. No one has talked about, restaurants by default are not sustainable. We are consumers, man. Between
waste is one of the biggest issues with a restaurant, right? That's
but just think, even if you had a zero waste, all right, we're completely utilizing our ingredients to their max. We're completely, using every fish, everything we can. we're still using enormous amounts of water, electricity,
Gas.
gas. If you're into solid fuel, there's emissions, laundering,
Right. Commuting to get back and forth to work.
The
carbon footprint.
carbon footprint
is
on most
huge.
restaurants is enormous.
Well, it's because it's
Well,
a
that was a
luxury
smart
item, really,
answer,
right?
though.
Because food should be made and was made for a long time at home,
Right.
and it's become a luxury to the point where
I mean, we all got to eat.
we got to eat, and,
Right.
but it is one of life's luxuries that
And enjoying
it's probably worth a little bit of a
well-made
carbon
food,
footprint.
either you're cooking it yourself or someone is making it for you, is, in my opinion, there may be one thing out there that's more pleasurable, but it's one of life's
Yeah.
most pleasurable things for me. It
Yeah,
is the earth's gift to us, these ingredients, and you apply modern capitalism to the food chain and you get what we have now, which is a
Right.
totally broken food chain.
Right.
So living slow, it's not easy to do. You think about okay, what's my carbon footprint? Well, that's a tough one to do, because
Right.
if you think about the carbon equation, there's only 100% carbon on the planet, right? And so it's liberated carbon and sequestered carbon equals 100% carbon, right? And so if I'm sequestering or conserving more than I'm liberating, okay, you're carbon negative.
Right.
That's a challenge in
Right.
today's world. If your
Yeah.
goal is carbon neutral, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if everybody was carbon neutral, it's a help. I think we're past the tipping point.
Right.
A lot of people are saying we're not. I think we're probably at this point just sort of slowing down the environmental Armageddon.
I think we've just thrown the anchor out behind the boat.
Yeah, I
Right?
think
the boat's still moving forward. We just threw the anchor.
and that's what makes regenerative agriculture so important. That's
Yes.
what makes polyculture so important, as opposed to, this is organic, but it's organic monoculture in a building that never touches soil. Okay, you're not using chemicals, but
It's still not real.
you're not giving anything back.
Right. And I think
to
I think I saw that. What was the documentary called, honey, that we loved? The farm one?
Biggest little farm.
Biggest Little Farm? Or
Sure,
Little Big
that's
Farm?
great. Yeah.
And I think we
That was up in
learned from.
Murrieta. That's not
Yeah.
very far
Yeah.
from
We
it.
went
Yeah.
Moore Park. Oh, it was in Moore Park.
Yeah, somewhere up there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in Moore. I actually went and visited it. I just had to go see it because I just love that documentary. But it was so interesting to me to see how much every single thing relies on something else. Like
It is
the
so
apple
interconnected.
doesn't
So
just
beautiful.
grow. If you just grow the apple in the dirt loses all its nutrients. Nothing else
Yeah.
survives.
Such a beautiful
But when it
thing.
starts going into a circle of life, you see that the owl and the worm and the duck have a lot to do with the apple. And the
that's-
weed and everything. It was great.
And that's where you start dealing with chemicals that now destroy soil health. The reason why you have to now add fertilizers, because you've
Right.
destroyed
All
the natural, balance in the soil. And so it's this vicious cycle. And, between using, adding insects, I buy about 50,000 ladybugs a year.
You do?
And add them to our farms down
Yeah.
there. There's no better predator on the planet than,
Really?
than a ladybug.
Ladybugs
Are they
badass.
badass?
Love that.
They consume like twice their weight in aphids in one
Oh,
day
I
or
love
something
it.
like that.
I might
it's
be part
wild.
ladybug.
Yeah.
Aphids?
Do you like aphids?
No, I like burritos, but I can do
Okay.
twice my body weight in
Yeah,
burritos.
I don't know that burritos are considered
Ladybug.
Predator?
an infestation.
They are sometimes. They're definitely a
No,
predator in my
that's-
household.
But burrito side, I've never seen that. But so you start making decisions on a daily basis, just as a normal, world citizen, and know where your food comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Absolutely.
know the source.
Yes. Yep.
If your fishmonger can't tell you where the fish was from, where it was caught, or how it was caught,
Don't eat it.
you probably shouldn't buy that.
Yeah.
And probably the step before that is have a fishmonger. Right?
Well,
Instead of just maybe
I mean,
just
even in the grocery store, man. If
That's
you
what I
buy,
mean,
If
yeah.
if you buy shrimp in the grocery store and they can't tell you where it comes from, how it was farmed,
Yes.
or it was wild
don't
caught,
buy it.
Exactly.
what's
where
the
it's
wild
from.
caught gear set,
Yep.
all those things are, it's about informing yourself, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
I did a little study for one of these talks I did down at that seminar, just talking about plastics.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I used the population of Baja California as an example.
Okay.
And I said, if every single person living in the state of Baja California reduced their single-use plastic by 1 bottle a day, a half a liter water bottle empty weighs like 10 grams or something like that. It was like 13 million kilos of plastic a year.
Yeah.
1 bottle per person per day.
Wow.
I mean, that's like, whoa. And then you hear, the number, oh, well, I recycle. Yeah, but globally, 9% of everything that goes to be recycled is actually recycled.
Ugh,
and in first world
number.
countries like the United States, it's even less.
No.
Because in underdeveloped places or developing places, the need for the resource is higher.
Sense.
So there's more impetus on doing that. In a place here where it's just like, we put something in that can and
we're done with it.
And for us, the relationship ends.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know where that goes.
Right.
We don't know what it ends up with. We don't know.
But isn't that kind of the struggle with everything from finding a fishmonger to know about your recycling to even knowing where you're going to eat and what you do, is that in today's society, we have to know so much. We have to take photos and videos of so much. We're responsible for this fast-paced life that becomes hard.
But it's almost like getting back to basics.
But that's so your suggestion is just the slowing down is to slow down to ask questions.
Well, it's everything. I think it's just the consumer mentality, and it's the hey, will that shirt last you, another 6 months? Probably. So keep wearing it, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, and I don't want to sound fatalist, but the solution may only be some sort of a collapse that creates a reset, right?
Yes, capitalism has failed us.
And that's sort of scary, to be able to get back to a point where we feel like, okay, a great example, and I know that I'm looking at the clock just like you are, but I'm really enjoying the conversation.
I love this part. So I'm gonna go.
I got time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go down a few blocks and come back, just because I really think that this is great. I love the
Mexicali is nice.
It's good. It took a minute to warm up. Perfect.
Hey, we can go straight down to Valle and
here we go.
Yeah, and have some tacos.
An interesting example of that in a very, very small scale was COVID for us in Guadalupe Valley.
Okay.
We had grown exponentially every year through 2019, and it was like, oh wow, this is more than I want. It was out of my control. I no longer felt comfortable being in my own space. It became a factory, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, we're making compromises based on volume. Yeah, the money was nice, but at what expense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm trying to find every opportunity I can to be in events or anywhere so I don't have to be there, right? And COVID hits, which was gnarly for everybody. We were very, very fortunate to be in a position where we could, overcome it. And what it allowed us to do was reset. It allowed us to go into the space every single day for 5 months and go,
is this what we want?
We got to rethink this. We got to redo this. We don't know what restaurants are going to look like, afterwards. We don't know if restaurants will even exist after this. We don't know, there were so many unknowns. Now it feels like everybody's even forgotten.
I know, but you got to be creative
too. The darkness and depth of where everybody was during that time.
Oh, so heavy.
The only people buying big houses were the glove and the face mask and the hand sanitizer people, right? So, when we did reopen, a couple of things. It allowed us to, and really almost from a financial need, growing our own food before was sort of almost just like a feather in our cap kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was like a hobby, like an ego thing almost. And then
it was a badge that you could tell people.
And we were
right?
doing it, but we weren't doing it
From your heart.
No, it was definitely from the heart, but we weren't doing it consequent enough. We weren't reaching its maximum potential. So reopening, we got no help from the Mexican government. So we were required by law to pay our employees during this time. And so we're paying our entire staff for 5 months without any income. I'm still paying rent. We're still paying, and it was a bad time to build a house. We were building a house at that time, right? And so it was like, I don't have money to purchase. So now I have to really, really be creative and concentrate 100%. And so now we've got everything literally from the garden.
Okay.
Right. So now we're not buying anything.
But it was out of necessity though.
Well, we were already using the garden,
Right.
but we were buying things to supplement, locally grown and other things.
If something didn't
So now
sprout
you're
or something
everything.
didn't happen, then you'd just be like, well, it's okay. We'll just go spend more money and buy that.
And it allowed us to, limit the number of people that we received.
Yes.
We were required to, but what it did is it reset us back to a level that where we were before, where I wanted to be.
Yes.
That super sort of fine line between, hey, we're profitable, because nothing can be sustainable unless it's profitable. Because if it's being subsidized, that's not profitable. And then there's that fine line between profitability and art, right?
Yes.
Or the experience.
Pretty on point. So, Drew, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Drew.
much for joining
Thank you.
us today.
Awesome.
And thanks for the ride.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Chef Drew. That was fantastic conversation. Loved riding around with you. Didn't want it to end. Big thanks to my wife in the back seat. Best co-host ever. Thank you, Aaron. I want to thank everyone on the Straw Hut Media team, including executive producer Ryan Tillotson and our editor and producer, Parker J. Hicks. And as always, a big thank you to Fletcher Jones Motor Cars in Newport Beach for providing this beautiful Mercedes-Benz EQE to be our rolling podcast studio. Join us next time on Locales Only, where you can buckle up and go for a ride in our mobile podcast studio with some of the coolest people in Southern California.